welcome to today's episode of the There She Goes podcast. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Sarah, and I can't wait to share her story today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for giving me the honor of getting to share your story on this platform. I'm very excited. I had the pleasure of listening to your podcast episode with Hutton on her Soft Power podcast, and I was immediately drawn to your story. I was very inspired, and I'm honored that you chose to share the story on There She Goes. So, for those of you who don't know Sarah, let me give you a quick introduction. Sarah Lizama, also known as Joy, owns Joyful Creations. She works in marketing and events and helps creatives and entrepreneurs turn vision into impact. She's a two-time cancer survivor, an angel mom, and a wife. We just found out we got married in the same year, just a month apart from each other. And she's someone who's walked through a lot of life experiences that have shaped how she sees growth, purpose, and resilience. So I can't wait for you to get to hear her story today. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. Again, I'm just so honored to be here.
Yay! So let me start off with the very first question related to your name. So I mentioned that your name is Sarah, but you're also known as Joy. So I'm curious. I think we talked about this. Your middle name is actually Leticia. So why do you think your mom, named you Joy? And how do you identify with the name Joy and the feeling of joy after what we kind of shared a little sneak peek about some of these moments of grief, pain, or loss that you've experienced in your life?
This is such a good question. So my middle name, yes, is Leticia, and it actually carried on kind of from a family name. There was a family member, I think on my dad's side, who was named Leticia, and so they wanted to carry on that generational thing, but they didn't know that the meaning behind it meant joy. So my mom, she was a little bit hesitant of like me carrying on this name of this aunt because she didn't even know the aunt. But then once she found the meaning, she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll let the middle name be Leticia." So that's how that kind of came into my name and identifying it with all that I went through. Gosh, that's such a big question right there. I would say that it definitely took a lot of reflection, of focusing on just the blessings and the victories and just little moments through these journeys that I experienced in life of still holding on to hope, basically, because I feel like joy and hope are very intertwined with one another. So that is definitely where it identifies for me of really just still smiling through, still not giving up, persevering through these experiences. But yeah, it actually just started by like a family member's name and then doing a little bit research of finding like, oh, there's meaning to this name, which is joy. And then as my life unfolded and going through this hardship and that hardship of really just narrowing in, identifying with it, of intertwining with hope and not giving up. And it actually kind of just became my whole embodiment of who I am as a person, of really being positive, really just not trying to let your pain consume you and really focusing on there's a bigger purpose, there's brighter days, all those positive notes.
So I know I told you that I like to go in chronological order here, but actually, I think it's a perfect segue quickly to ask about before we really dive deep into the story is, your name itself, like you said, and you embody the term joy. So I'm curious how that led you to start a business called Joyful Creations, since there's a lot of tie there.
Yes, there is a lot of ties. So Joyful Creations actually officially started during pandemic area. As I'm sure you're familiar and heard other stories, pandemic era was kind of just where people was picking up hobbies and just like doing a lot of creation because at that time we couldn't go out. So during COVID, I realized I like to create. And creating was always something that I did as like a kid, whether it was like through singing or dancing or some type of form of art. So during the pandemic, I used to kind of create just decor, whether it be banners or like handmade vases, or just different type of decor that would be used for birthday parties and celebrations. So I would create that and then I would just drop it off to people who are still having like, birthday parties, but not able to like go to birthday parties at a park, just like, the indoor type of thing. So it started as a hobby. And I actually had my cousin because she was a really good like artist at drawing and things like that. So it was kind of like a co-collab at that time. So it was totally a different career at that point. It was decor, but it still had event planning in it a little bit, but more as a passion. So that's how that started. And then over time, I was always kind of just on the side doing marketing. And that was a very unique story in itself, how I met kind of the right person, right time scenario. But I never saw it as anything further. It was just something that I enjoyed. And then she kind of planted the seed a little bit years down and saying, "Hey, have you ever thought of like starting your own business?" And then life again unfolded. And at that time, I was like, "Oh, no, not really." And then that seed that got planted came back where I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe I can." And then I started entwining it with the event planning post COVID, once, things were back to normal. And so I kind of just stuck with that name of Joyful Creations, but it evolved into bigger things and more things. So I no longer really do decor. Sometimes I can for the events, depending on what type of event it is. That definitely is a passion, but mainly it's event coordination and marketing.
I love that. And I love that you coordinated and collaborated with your cousin. You said that's good as drawing. I We have a little bit of similarities in the event planning and marketing space because I also do wedding planning,
Yes.
and I noticed that I'm a project manager by day, and I'm like good at event planning, but what I'm not so great at, it's not an actual skill of mine, is the design aspect, especially digital design or drawing. But my cousin is. And it's funny. I'm like, hey, hopefully she listens into this episode because I'm actually pushing her and going like, hey, girl, do you want to like collab and do some stationery and digital designs for weddings? And so I love that idea that you kind of both took your strengths and helped each other out. It's like a total tie-in to do design and event planning.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's such a power move of how you mentioned if your cousin can collab with you in little stationery invitations. And that's so interesting too that you bring that up of weddings because that's something that my business, I kind of took a turn and
Mm-hmm.
started helping wedding companies, and actually with like the coordination, and different marketing. So yeah, weddings have been kind of a little bit of a main focus for me this year. But it's been a learning curve for me because I did weddings prior, but not as much as I'm doing currently right now.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that because I see you do a lot of entrepreneur
Yes.
style like type events or networking events. So it's interesting. There's a high demand, as always, for wedding coordination and
Yes.
event design. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. I always say it's a whole beast in itself when it comes to
Yeah.
weddings. It's a
Oh
completely
yeah.
different event. Yes. As you know.
That's yeah. It's and a high stakes situation.
Oh, yes. Yep. The pressure is definitely
The
there.
pressure's on.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, I want to take us back now. I know I did a diversion here. We talked a little bit about your name and how that relates to your business, but I would love for listeners to take to peek behind the curtain at the founder, right, of Joyful Creations. And like we talked about, I just love that hearing your episode with Hutton gave me a view of your multi-dimensional um, human side of things, and that's what I'm been trying to do more and more with my own episodes. So I would love for you to take us back to the fact that you were raised by a single mom of, I believe you said, of five, and you're the oldest of five, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, just tell us about how, when you were 14 years old, you got that first cancer diagnosis and you were being homeschooled, and what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, definitely. So, age 14. was diagnosed, and that whole journey was not a common diagnose. Like I didn't hear the words, you have cancer. The way how my journey started was actually through an injury, and through an injury that I was like on a dance team in high school, freshman year, and I had spotters, but unfortunately, I still hit the floor, and we had padding to protect us, but it was very thin padding. And so I still had a heavy impact when I fell. So I got injured on my lower back. Thankfully, no broken bones, nothing that needed like surgery, but definitely needed like recovery time. And so was able to recover, but through that recovery time, I was given a lot of pain medication and having to do like physical therapy and things to help recover. And then other symptoms started coming up of my digestive system, of my stomach. And it's quite interesting because your lower back is on your backside, and then going around is your stomach. And so to this day, I actually don't know if that like was the main cause. There's been a lot of different opinions of like, oh yeah, your injury with the pain medication could have triggered and caused, but other times they say a different reason. It could be genetics. So to this day, I really don't know the main cause of why I got diagnosed with all that I did. But it's part of the journey, of not really knowing the unknown.
Not knowing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started off with that, and it started slowly where I had to find the right doctor to actually hear me, because there was a lot of times of like, oh, she's young, she reads too many books or watched too many movies, a lot of gaslighting in the medical that I experienced. And my poor mom, as you mentioned, she was a single mom, and so she was my biggest advocate through this whole journey. And so she herself had a research of how to advocate and how to be that voice for me, because I'm in so much pain that I don't have all the right words to describe all that I'm going through. I just know that I'm in turmoil, it's heavy, and I just don't want to. I'm not able to eat, not able to like function, and I'm only 14. I'm not able to go to school. So there's just already a lot that I am experiencing at that age. So that's how it all kind of started. And I would say within a year and a half, we were able to find a good doctor that did the right tests and was able to they diagnosed me, but they diagnosed me with kind of the terminology of you have a bad cell. And then it went into, well, what does that mean? What is that? And then through further pressing and investigation, we were able to get the diagnosis and go in through the treatment plan. But it was just a very lengthy asking questions, not always saying like, okay, you want us to do this, but why? What's going on? So yeah, my medical journey was not, I would say, the common journey of where it's like, oh, you have cancer. We had to really kind of fight for our diagnosis. And my cancer too of the stage was a precancer that they found first, and it was in the esophagus. And then they did find a mass around, I want to say the third year, fourth year in my stomach, where they were like, okay, well, we're going to monitor it. We're not going to do nothing to it. So it's constant monitoring. And then at age 17 is when they're like, okay, we need to go in, we need to remove it. But during that whole span of being age 14 and 17, I was constantly homeschooled, independent studies. There's a lot of secondary issues that I was having with the chemo, the medication that I was on, as well as just having other digestive issues on top of the cancer. I had like acid reflux disease, hiatal hernia. There was all these other diagnoses that came with it, as well as just the side effects to the treatment and the medication. So yeah, that was a very impactful time, and it also really forced me to again kind of grow up quick and like walk in my identity of still having joy. I would say it did not come naturally. It came with a lot of practice and a lot of working through different things, especially being a teenager. There's even that whole side to it. But yeah, that is a little bit of from 14 all the way to 17, 18, I would say.
Yeah, that's a major disruptor in your life. Talk about how you mentioned at the beginning, like pivoted with your business. We'll talk about pivoting with your life. You don't, no one ever expects that, especially not at such a young age as 14. And the fact that you didn't even actually know what was going on, you're going through all this pain and you don't have answers for years.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, that's why it stuck out to me so much that I'm like, there's no coincidence that your name means joy. I'm like, that's not a coincidence, right? That I'm like, that's a lot to take in at such a young age. And you talked about the pandemic. So many kids, right, during the pandemic, during like those middle school, high school, even elementary school years, anyone in a school age felt disruption even more than everybody else because you were disrupting that home, like that schooling phase, right? And so you felt it, but in a personalized, individualized way. How
Yeah.
did you, I mean, how did you deal and manage with all of that during that phase? Like, what did keep you going? Because I remember I heard, and it broke my heart that it was at a point where you didn't even know if you were going to survive. So I know that you mentioned like you weren't really planning for the future. You were like just kind of day by day. So walk us through that and what helped you survive it, not just physically, right? Survive it, but survive it emotionally, mentally, psychologically.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, that was definitely, it was some dark times with that, just because, again, not getting answers and getting more of predictions of like, you're not gonna make it, there's nothing more we can do. Like hearing those words at such a young age too, or hearing just also the facts of like, your stomach, your insides, they've gone through so much battles and you have scarring, and it's going to be really hard for you to ever have kids. That was something that I heard as well. And again, I'm so young, hearing all of these definite future things that I'm like, well, wait a minute, like I wasn't even I wasn't even thinking of the future, but now I'm forced to think that I may not even have a future. And so it was a lot of battles during that. And I would say my faith was the biggest component to really ground me, um, really kind of bring me back to this place where I'm like, okay, I don't know. That's the reality of it, but I'm going to hold on to hope that whatever happens next is for a reason and for a purpose. So definitely, my faith was one of those just techniques that I was able to put into perspective with that.
That I just can't. You're telling it is like this negativity you're hearing, right? And it's coming from a mathematical place, a
Yeah,
statistical place, a
yeah,
logistic, like a logic based place.
right.
And I love how you're countering it with the exact opposite, which is a faith based place.
Yeah, yeah,
So, how, I mean, not everybody maybe relates to getting, and maybe they're due, like a medical diagnosis with, like, very, um, what you don't want to hear in terms of a diagnosis or future predictions. But we all do hear negative voices or criticisms or voices that are telling us literally out loud, like people who are telling us, or even our internal voices saying, you're not going to make it, those difficult things. How did you shut out voices who, by the way, also have authority, right? You're young. So already you're younger, they're adults. They have medical degrees, right? So how did you manage to um, push through the noise of people who are, who have this education background, who have the maybe like they've seen this before, who are older than you, and say, I'm gonna stick to, you know, the hope of moving forward.
Yeah. So I will say honestly, not always was I able to do that. Honestly, there was definitely moments where I felt the full impact of their words, and I sat in it and I let it consume me. So I had to work through that, and that took help from different type of help. I did therapy for a while to really kind of go back and realize that what this person said affected me in ways that I didn't even realize. So therapy was another, as well as kind of finding outlets of things that I could do. I know I shared a little bit in my previous Hudson's episode that I love to sing and dance, and a lot of those things actually had to change once I got diagnosed because energy levels and just different things I was not able to do. So I was able to still kind of be creative with it though. I found one style of dance that I was able to participate in a little bit, and that was actually flamenco. And that was where I kind of really challenged my frustrations, my anger, just anything that I wasn't able to communicate properly with my words at that time into dance. And I'm not sure if you ever seen flamenco, but it's a very passionate dance. And it's really using your feet like it's like a tap dance, as well as the uppers like ballet. But I was really able to just like sit in a chair and learn the musicality with my feet. And of course, I would have to take breaks and things like that, but at least for a little while, I was able to escape, because being in that medical journey, it really does consume. There's endless doctor's appointments, there's testing, there's medication, there's just everything. Your whole life is altered to that identity. And that was something that was really important to me was I didn't want to be known as just the sick girl. And that was something that I was tied to, of like, oh, that girl, Sarah, in high school. Oh, she's the sick girl. She's the one that can't come to school because she's sick. So that was something that I had to work through as well, of really just trying to break it, trying to break the mold, trying to not have these voices permeated to my head, as how you mentioned, because there's so much noise. So really going to outlets of creativity, whether it was therapy as well, getting the support that I needed. And it was uncomfortable, because I'm doing things where I'm like, I was not taught to reach for help. I was not taught to go and say, you know what, I'm in a place where I don't know what to do. I'm not getting answers. And again, it goes into me having to grow up a lot quicker than you would have if you weren't given that diagnosis or going through those medical experiences. So yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded answer for
No,
yeah.
no, you don't. I have so many like follow up questions. I'm like, oh my god, you're hitting all the points I want to ask you. So there's a lot. I do want to ask you an identity based question too about, that's really important, and that's why I notice there's so much more to you than this is a part of your story, but this is not the entire story, and this is also not your identity. That's why I didn't start with that in the biography. It's part of your biography. It is not your whole biography. And I know that it is extremely difficult to not be tie your identity to a health diagnosis like this when you're at an impressionable age of 14, 15, 16. You're missing school, people notice, like, of course, right? So I want to know what it was like for you to navigate your journey of finding your identity outside of your health diagnosis. But another question, because I don't want to forget, you also mentioned that you loved singing and dancing as a creative outlet for you. And it broke my heart when I heard that you couldn't sing anymore. I mean, I think you mentioned that because it's esophageal cancer at first. So it literally has to do with your vocal cords. And I love singing and I love dancing. Like, I'm a big performer. So I also would love to know how you grieved the loss of your singing voice. However, were able to find your voice along the way. Maybe not your singing voice, but you are now currently in this podcast sharing your example of how you found your voice one way or another. Like, it didn't stop you.
Beautiful question of how you formed that all together. Thank you. Yes. So, yes, that was definitely a breaking point in my life of realizing because singing was my first love. And it actually was instilled by my mom. Me and my mom, she would sing to me as a kid, lullabies. But then after it would become like little games that we would do or car rides. It was just always like our thing of music and singing. And so when I went through that, it it damaged my vocal cords. Even now, I struggle with kind of sometimes talking. My voice levels are not always, I can't be as loud as I want to be, or there's different cracks that happens because of all the damage that I went through with that. So finding my voice now, definitely it's still a journey I'm on. I'm going to be quite honest with that and transparent. It's something that I am learning how to be bold in and embracing that, yes, this is part of my story, but it's not all of it. There's so much more to come. And that also goes into this big kind of just lesson that I always love to share with people of just like to embrace more and dream more, even when other people say, no, you can't. Because that really kind of just, it's your resilience, it's your perseverance, and it's your story, it's your journey, and you're in control of it, not others. Yes, they have titles, yes, this and that, but you're the one living it. So you can craft it out however you like to. And I have many real experiences where I'm like, you know what, I can dream more, or this did happen and it showed where I can explore that route and dream more. So finding my voice has definitely been part of actually just joyful creations, the whole of it as a business, myself, personally, of what I've gone through. But yeah, my voice, definitely, I miss it. I miss singing. Definitely, that's something that I had to grieve through. And I still do at times. I feel like grief is one of those things that it's not just like a one and done, like it hits you out of nowhere sometimes where like maybe it was a favorite song that I used to sing with my mom and I'm like, "Oh, I can't do that, but I can hum to it. I can maybe do flamenco to it, depending on the beat and the rhythm of it." But yeah, there's different ways of that I had to be adaptable. And that's a really big factor of my story too, of kind of realizing saying, okay, I can't do this, but what can I do? What can I use? Can I use props? Can I, use something different to still be an art form? Because that's the beautiful thing too about music and dance. It comes in many different forms. So yeah, that's something that I still carry dear. I love to go support my friends and family. I just can't be part of the stage of it anymore. Yeah.
That you found a way. And I love that you mentioned flamenco and that there's passion to it because I think that helps. Passion can also be like anger can be a passionate emotion. Frustration is a passionate emotion. So is happiness. So like you deposited all of that in physically moving your body and like releasing that tension and frustration into a beautiful art form. I love that. And I love how you were like, hey, yes, sometimes maybe you like, you can't sing it, but you can hum it or you can enjoy it. You can, you know, speak in other ways. There's other ways to use your voice, and you're finding that.
Yes.
So I love that, and that I really resonated with that because of the singing component when I heard that. So also tying back the identity piece here because it's like as much as you don't want it to be part of your identity or all of your identity, even worse, it happens, right? Especially when you're in the thick of it. So I love what you said, how, and I think this is true, not a lot of people talk about what happens, like what does the journey look like after surviving cancer, right? Like I think it's like during it, okay, like you might have a lot of support systems and there's a lot of information, but not so much. What about after? And I love how, you really weren't sure if you were going to survive or not, or you didn't know if you should even plan for your future. So once you realized like you were in the clear, um, like what did that look like to shake up your identity and be like, oh, I get to plan again. What do I want to do with my life? Like that must have been a whole journey too.
Oh, yes, definitely. That was, I always say, like, part one was the whole cancer diagnosis, going through the medical, and then there was a part two to it where they don't mention, they don't really talk about, at least for my experience, I didn't hear that much of it. But there actually is a lot of resources, a lot of community that can help you through that. And that's actually what I found. I found community again, kind of through my own research and connecting through different like referrals of people who beat a cancer and share their stories. And there's even like conferences, and they talk about all different types of just aftermath from symptoms that you would go through, from different treatments, um, to your emotions, to all that you will like, the triggers, things like that, the scans that come back up, and you get scan anxiety, different things like that. So I would say it's not talked about a lot, but there is a lot of resources. It's just really finding the right ones that fit for you and work for you. But yeah, both experiences were terrifying. Both because it's like, okay, I'm not gonna plan, and then okay, now what? I can plan. Where do I even begin? And if you know me, I am such a planner. So even though they told me not to plan, I did have like a secret little, stash of like, okay, well, I would maybe like to go to this college or like do this in life and things like that. So I was able to kind of bring it out, but at that stage, I was like, all of these kind of seem just far-fetched. I never really dreamed of them so much, with just kind of little things that, again, I didn't give myself permission, at that time. So it was scary to even step of like, oh, I can give myself permission now. And what does that look like? Because for 6 years, I told myself, no, don't even open that little secret stash, just keep it hidden, don't even bring it out, don't even play, don't even daydream about it, just leave it there. And so bringing that out was very just a big step of like, okay, well, is this even where I would dream again? And I kind of had to start all over because, 14-year-old Sarah is completely different from 18-year-old Sarah, completely different stages life. So it was like starting fresh. And I feel like we all do that. We always restart many times in our life where we constantly bring out that vision board and create our visions and our dreams.
Yeah, we evolve, and like you said, like very different goals and dreams as we evolve, and then we think we want something. Turns out we actually wanted something completely different.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I love that, and I love that you have been able to pivot a lot. And actually, one of the things I think you did mention, and I wanted to talk through is walking us a little bit through your career journey. So now it's post teenager years and when you're starting to work. I don't know if this was your first job because I know you had a teaching career as well, but I love to hear that you did start at one point working in hospitals. I think you said child life therapy, which includes play therapy for kids, which I love because my entire, I think there she goes, and my entire value here is inserting play and joy as you know how that it's very important for our nervous system. It's very important for our overall health. So joy and play, and so you're all about joy through and finding the joy through the pain, through the grief and loss, but you also got to have the side of the play aspect. So how was that for you, and what got you into that type of work?
Yeah, so what got me into that type of work was definitely my experience of my medical, of hearing that, oh, there is hospitals that provide that service. And the nearest hospital to us was actually Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. And so I worked there, and I was working towards certification of becoming a child life specialist. So we have to get like certified, and there's like an internship and everything. I kind of started that journey post COVID, but it went into COVID. So there was a lot of kind of like interruptions again as life happens. Um, but I was able to work in the hospitals, and my experience was really I was able to take my experience of what I kind of didn't get to really have of like that service and those advocates, and really having someone be there, not just for me, but like for my family, for my mom, and be like, oh, this is what every hospital, this is what every child, teenager, even adults that are going through a life or death circumstance really needs. So that really was my passion into it. And then the other kind of trigger or passion that kind of just reminded me to keep going into that career was my great grandma. My great grandma, she was a teacher, and she always wanted another teacher in the family. And so I did pursue teaching, and I became preschool teacher, dance teacher a little bit. And then this actually, the child life, falls under the teaching as well, just because we are giving support to the child in their terminology and their developmental area. So I'm like, it's a form of it. It's a form. So those two really were the lead causes of getting me into the career. And so, yeah, I worked at Children's Hospital in the child life department. And my time there, I loved it. It was amazing. Met wonderful people. I eventually actually worked in the events department and was helping plan events, and brought like a prom to the kids, and just really brought kind of normalcy and still celebration, again, factoring in that joy despite all that they're going through. So yeah, that was such a beautiful experience for me, very impactful. And again, life took a turn in my personal life, and I had to reevaluate, and that's where kind of Joyful Creations was creeping in a little bit more and more, and then blossomed.
I see the tie-in now. I love
Yeah.
that. There's
Yeah,
always a tie-in. It's like
always.
one little element. Sometimes it's really obvious. Sometimes it's just like more subtle. But
Yeah,
yeah, I love how you started naturally doing event planning, and you're like, wait, I like this.
yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
I could do this in other, ways, shapes, and forms. I love
exactly.
that. Well, speaking of children, speaking of planning for the future and, hearing and being told what you can and can't do and what's possible and not possible for you. I know you mentioned that, when you were going through like the like stomach area issues of, the cancer diagnosis, there was some scarring where the medical team was saying, you might not be able to have kids. So in your mind, you're going through life assuming that you can't have children. So I know you talked about how, and I'd want to hear it from your own words, but I know I heard you say that you were very focused in your career. You already assumed that children were not really going to play a factor in your life, but then you had a surprise pregnancy, right? And walk us through that and how that went for you, because that was probably another total life disruption slash pivot that you were not expecting.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely wasn't expecting it on many different areas, as you mentioned. So, yeah, I was not planning for children, never even thought of dreaming of being a mom. And I know sometimes that is a common dream of women, of saying, oh, I want, to be a mom. Motherhood was never in my Pinterest board or vision board. I never allowed myself to get there. And so I had this unexpected pregnancy, and I did not know I was pregnant until unfortunately I went through a miscarriage. And so when I went through that, it it put me in immediate shock, because I was like, wait a minute, my body can go through a pregnancy after being told at a young age. And I was always told that, you know, don't let doctors define you. Like, the woman's body is a miracle and there's different things. But I didn't give myself kind of that hope when it came to that scenario. To other things, I was really good at pushing out, but that one really narrowed down into me where I just was like, okay, I can't. And I thought as a little girl too, my dream wasn't really motherhood. It was more career driven, and travel and that type of thing. And I'm sure that was impacted by the single mom and just like the childhood I had. So I just really didn't explore it. I didn't feed into it. And so going through that was very heartbreaking because not only am I grieving a life, but I'm also grieving a life that I could have dreamed of. And that really narrowed in on me where I'm like, oh, okay, there was still some voices that I carried on with me through even where I'm at now in life. And that was a main voice. And so my husband, being married as well, I'm going through my own journey, but he has his. And so as a wife, you're carrying both and trying to work together and trying to figure out because he always knew too that not being able to have kids was always a real deal, or maybe being able to have kids but going through a lot of issues and different things like that. So it wasn't going to be easy. But yeah, I did not know I was pregnant and lost our firstborn, and that was a very real and painful situation. It actually opened the door for me to find more women who are actually really struggling and going through that scenario. It opened a lot of different, I'm like, wow, there is a whole just stories out there that are needing to be shared on this topic. I believe the statistics, they're like it's 1 in 4 women that go through a miscarriage or like they lose a child. And it's like, why isn't this headline more? Why isn't this talked about? So that's opened a whole new kind of door and more advocacy on like my end of wanting to share my story. But yeah, it was definitely an experience that I am still learning through and still, but the beautiful thing that came about it was that I was able to dream and be like, you know what? My body can, and I can picture motherhood. It kind of awakened a little secret. I know I mentioned like that little secret stash. It kind of awakened that part a little bit, where I'm like, oh, maybe that was always there. I just didn't give myself the space and the room to let that be part of my dream. And so, yeah, it was definitely breaking, but it was a necessary breaking for me to evolve and get where I am right now. Yeah.
Wow. I that's that's why I said that I feel extremely honored that you are giving me the privilege to share your story on here, because it is, you're being, very open with us. You're being very vulnerable, and there is a lot of loss. There's a lot of grief and loss and feelings and pain that are going through all of this, and I can't imagine what that must have been like, especially first the shock that your body's even capable of pregnancy, and then of course now the grief that you didn't get to experience motherhood, at least with that pregnancy. And as you know, we talked about this earlier in the beginning, I'm going through my own fertility journey. I've been on it for 2 years trying to get pregnant. Still haven't been able to, and right, so I'm in the middle of that journey. I haven't even reached that next step, but I have a big fear that I know statistically, even if I am able to get to that next step, seeing it to full term and everything, that's a whole nother part of the journey. And it is, unfortunately, it is very common. I feel like I went in as a child assuming that like fertility, like having a babies was just like super, it's like super easy. It's just kind of like another thing that happens in life, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, not for every woman. And actually, not for many women.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy to me. So, and I also just love though that you honored your experience by identifying yourself as a mom of an angel mom. I thought that was beautiful. Not everybody chooses that, identity, but you're like, no, I'm grabbing this situation. This is part of my identity. And I was actually going to ask you is if which you touched on it, as you know, like I said, I do want to become a mom, so that hit home for me. So I was curious if that sparked this like craving in you to want to become a mom. Sounds like it did. I also really love how you're just validating that, all of us already struggle with limiting beliefs. I feel like you hear that term a lot, right? So it's a belief that's limiting you in reaching your goals or moving forward with something. But you didn't just go through limiting beliefs, which are, I think, a little more, uh, they're less evidence based, I would say, right? So it's like limiting beliefs are kind of just like your mind working against you with fear. You were battling against, again, evidence based statistical probabilities, medical diagnoses, medical, you know, predictions. So I just love that, you validated in your own life that those were significant limiting beliefs for you to try to fight against, but your body proved to be capable of more than you were told it was.
Yeah,
So you're just proof that even a limiting belief that's coming from logic based statistics, math, right, can still be wrong, and your body can be capable of more than you think it can.
exactly. Yes, it can. It definitely can. It goes beyond all of what you mentioned of just like evidence-based, math-based, all of that. There's miracles. Miracles do exist. It can happen. So really, again, going back to kind of just the faith aspect, the opposite of all those, and bringing that into play really does help. But yes, it's very important to me to honor that part of my journey, as well as kind of just all the parts of my journey, because it all ties in. Somehow I may not see it at that given moment, but I feel as the story unfolds and my journey keeps on evolving, it's like, oh, okay, I see the connection now. It takes time, but it's all part of this bigger purpose, all part of who you're creating yourself to become, the life you want. And so, yeah, it's very important. And I completely respect too. I understand some women don't want to have that title of an angel mom, but they may find other ways that's just to them of recognizing and honor. And I think that's so important too, of just finding your own way of honoring that, because that's such a sacred part of us women. And it deserves honoring because, yes, you're honoring the life that you created, but your life too. And so it's finding beauty and just the purpose, the power into it, transforming it.
I love that. I love that so much. Yes, again, we're all about finding the pockets of joy, beauty, wonder, because that still exists. And I'm gonna have chills. I want to cry because it's so much more difficult to find that when you are in pain, when you are in discomfort, when you're going through hardship, when you're in an unknown period where you don't know what's happening with whether it's physically your body or with your life or with your marriage or there's so many factors here. So thank you for validating that, when we say joy, play, fun all matters, it's not that we're saying other emotions and other experiences don't exist. They coexist. And we're here inviting you to find those pockets and find the people that remind you to find that in your life because life is beautiful, but it's multi-layered, multi-dimensional. So, oh my gosh, Sarah, seriously, I've loved having you here and getting to hear your story. Two final questions for you. I know we talked a lot about all the different pivots in your life and a lot of the different things you've gone through. I know alignment is very important for you right now and in your life. So I'm just curious, like, what is aligned for you at this stage of your life right now?
Yeah, that is such a good question. So, alignment, I definitely am in my business of all that I'm just working towards and working people I'm working with. It's been amazing, just diverse. I work, as I mentioned, the weddings, also entrepreneurial. So, people who have just their own small businesses, whether it's in wellness or a product they're selling. So, really aligned in my business. And as you see on like social media, Joyful Creations. bringing that really to the community. And again, that joy element is focused in because it's bringing joy to not just the people who have that vision, but to the community and people being able to be a part of it. So my business is definitely in alignment and working towards keep on growing that alignment. And then also my personal life, I'm working towards that being, the work and life balance of alignment as well too. And so it's been a work in progress with both of those, but definitely my joyful creations. It's year 2 for me on this journey of starting off. Yeah, thank you. And it's been a lot of event focus, never a dull moment this year. So yeah, it's been great of doing those fun experiences and different collaborations, networking. For example, Hudson, I was able to connect with her, and through her, she was able to lead me to go on here, which I'm very grateful for.
And I'm grateful to have you here, and I'm grateful to Hutton for connecting us. So, what would you love for listeners to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit briefly earlier. So it's definitely give yourself permission to dream more, even despite the voices, all the noise. Give yourself permission to embrace all that you're going through, but also make room for more embracing. There's always more than what you can see and more than what you can even imagine. And so definitely just step into the more, even if it doesn't make sense, just step into the more.
So, as always, we will have all of your information of how people can connect with you in the show notes. But to share live on the episode, where can people find you and connect with
Yeah, so the best way is definitely on Instagram right now, which is Joyful Creation CA. And then my website I have where you can like book a meeting. It's still in progress of being officially live, but you can definitely just book a free constellation and as well as email joyfulcreations@gmail.com.
you? Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah, again, for coming on the show, for sharing what it looks like in real life with your own experience, that joy, beauty, grace, fun, love that can all coexist with what life throws at you. So thank you so much, Sarah. And I can't wait for people to listen to this episode.
Likewise, thank you again for having me.
See y'all next week.